was interesting. I had the Emir of Qatar come by the Oval Office today, and he owns Al Jazeera, basically. Pretty influential guy, and he is a big booster, big promoter of democracy all throughout the Middle East. Reform, reform, reform. You're seeing it on Al Jazeera. Now, he himself is not reforming significantly. There's no big move towards democracy in Qatar.
Of Al Jazeera, from being a somewhat critical voice of imperialism's wars of aggression in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Palestine, to being an open facilitator of the same aggression against Libya, Syria, and even now the progressive nations of Latin America, was perhaps the greatest propaganda trick I have seen in my lifetime. Co-opting the support of their faithful Arab viewers in the West, whose voices garnered particular prominence during the fashionable so-called Arab Spring, was an important move in order to get all progressive circles in the West to join in the essential criminalization of Gaddafi, when those very circles should have, in contrast, been elevating the status of the not-so-fashionable Libyan Jamahiriya and learning from it. Now all cards are on the table. Al Jazeera's Director General Wada Kanfar has resigned following the release of WikiLeaks cables, which revealed he has been taking orders from none other than the CIA. He has been replaced by a member of the Qatari royal family, which has been heavily engaged in the war against its fellow Arab brothers and sisters in Libya. But despite the role of Al Jazeera being clear as day now, it continues to get away with the same tricks of tugging on the liberal heartstrings of westernized audiences with its stories about how people in sovereign states of the global south's greatest tragedy is their lack of Western democracy, never mind that it has failed in the West. But despite Al Jazeera's interest in championing this ideology is obviously straightforward. It hosts the United States' largest military base in the Middle East, CENTCOM, and they are, of course, close friends.
As to Qatar, Emir Al-Thani is trying to perform an effort of political gymnastics that would have disabled Nadia Comaneci. Look at the splits. He seeks to have one foot with the Brotherhood and the extremist Sunni. He seeks to put another foot with the United States, the moderate Sunni, and the Gulf Cooperation Council. And while these legs are separated beyond human capacity, he's trying to do it all while kissing Ayatollah Khamenei. That is a disabling act of political gymnastics. He may believe that we are obligated to protect his regime because he hosts an American political base.
Openly housed Hamas leaders, Taliban leaders, and has several individuals who have been sanctioned by our U.S. State Treasury Department, and it has failed to prosecute them. At least one high-ranking Qatari official provided support to the mastermind of the 9/11 terror attacks against our country, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Then, of course, there is Khalifa Mohammed, who is a U.S., EU, and UN-designated international terrorist for his role in financing al-Qaeda and the 9/11 mastermind. In 2008, he was tried and convicted in absentia by Bahrain for his terrorist activity and arrested later that year by Qatar, only to be released by the Qataris 6 months later and then openly financed by Doha. Can anyone guess what Khalifa Mohammed has been up to these days? He was implicated in terror financing activities in 2012, but more recently he has been alleged to be financing and supporting terror in both Iraq and Syria with no response from the Qatari government.
Providing any funding to radical Islamists, it has to agree not to provide support or sanctuary to any of the groups that would be on the U.S. terrorism list, or to any groups that we define as contributing to instability in the region. I would like them to end their subsidy of Al Jazeera. You know, I don't believe in censoring the media, but I don't see why the state should be financing Al Jazeera. If it's a going concern, then let it support itself. The problem with Al Jazeera is it creates a platform that equates what are legitimate attitudes and those that are not. You know, when you treat extremist attitudes as being just the same as mainstream attitudes, what you're saying is this point of view is okay. And Al Jazeera shouldn't be used as a platform to make extremist attitudes appear to be okay.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level. And in the wake of that conference, nations came together and spoke to me about confronting Qatar over its behavior. We have to stop the funding of terrorism. I decided, along with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, our great generals and military people, the time had come to call on Qatar to end its funding. They have to end that funding and its extremist ideology in terms of funding. For Qatar, we want you back among the unity of responsible nations. I want to thank Saudi Arabia and my friend King Salman and all of the countries who participated in that very historic summit. It was truly historic. There has never been anything like it before, and perhaps there never will be again. Hopefully, it will be the beginning of the end of funding terrorism. It will therefore be the beginning of the end to terrorism. No more funding.
I believe military strikes by the United States and/or Israel would be back on the agenda. In such an air campaign, the United States may wish to use the Al Udeid air base in your country, sir. Given your country's ties to Iran, I'm curious about your take on this, and specifically, will you allow the air base in Qatar to be used in airstrikes against Iran should that eventuate?
Iran, and this is the subject which we are all dealing with today. Blame should not be in Qatar alone. We cannot change our geography. We are neighbor with Iran. We share the largest single-walled natural gas with Iran. We are not